isn't fully internalizing it, because words, that's another thing too. So many words have never met action. That's just an experience I've had in life as well. Words, no action. Nothing external from that. So it's easy for someone to say, I love you. And I've had people say, I love you, but then they go ahead and they do something that hurts me. And it's like, do you love me, or do you love my presence and what my presence gives you?
Hello to everybody. Welcome back to the Daily Humans podcast. I am Nina and this is...
I am Ashley. Hello.
And we formally welcome you to the 2025 Who's the Biggest Victim Award. Yes, everybody give a round of applause.
Yes! The best awards. Better than the Oscars. Better than the Emmys. Better than MTV. This is the award show you don't want to miss.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in today. First, we would like to really start off with a beautiful word from our sponsor, The Mirror, who has a really, really wonderful thing to bring to you guys today. What was that little quote that you had earlier, Ash, that you wanted to share with our beautiful audience tonight?
Well, my friend, I can no longer remember it.
People suck.
That was the right one. Thank you. Without you, I wouldn't be able to spread out my word to the public as the service that I'm giving, like many of the people that are receiving these awards also say. So thank you, my friend, for saying that. People are diabolical.
Yes, they are. Oh. But yeah, no. Thank you guys for tuning back in. How are you doing, Ash?
I just got my hair done.
Mm-hmm.
I did it myself.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling pretty fabulous. I'm wearing these small business earrings.
Ooh.
She's an amazing business. She's fabulente. And I'm feeling pretty pizzazzy,
Yeah.
jazzy, and fabulente.
Ashley-licious. That's what she is. And her hair is
Oh,
gorgeous.
the stuff that your brain comes up with is just like, I want to marry it. I want to marry your brain.
What do you mean? We're
I
already
want to marry your
married.
brain. I know, but I also want another marriage to your
Okay.
brain, so I can have
Okay.
2 rings on the one finger to your brain.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah. One's for the heart, others for the brain. I like that.
Yep, the whole brain
Yeah.
though, not like just the hippocampus or the prefrontal cortex. I mean, like the entire brain deserves it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
my marriage to it. You're
Yeah.
welcome. That's what I'm here
She
for. Acts
says
of
yes.
service. Oh, I'm going to start crying. It just makes my life, honestly. I love your brain.
Oh, before we
How's
hopped on, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, you go ahead.
Before we hopped on, Ashley had like a little nice pep talk for my heart and for my brain. And you know what? I don't want anybody to ever say that magical powers don't exist, because my brain was cramping and now it's not. And now it feels so much better. And it's all because of this beautiful, gorgeous, stunning, radiant phoenix flying through the sky, miracle woman that is sitting here in all of our presence. And you're very welcome, by the way. So yeah, thank you for that. I feel so much better today because of you.
I'm going to have to jump through. My Leo moon is absolutely losing its shit right now. The rising sign and the sun sign don't matter anymore. It's just Leo. She's front and center. I'm going to jump through this screen, come to Germany, and hug your brain and hug you.
thank you.
I was going to say something else as well, but yeah.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was gonna give you
Share
big
what
kids as well. Just a really big kids too.
she's feeling. Very, very giving today. Thank you.
I am. Because of the award ceremony, I feel just really, rosy. So
Yeah.
excited for people to receive these awards, and just for Nina's brain as well, because being married to something that is, like God is just everything. You know when they say someone's got a purpose? My purpose was to marry her brain and her.
Mary God.
I'm all good now. Yep. Do you know you're God? You're God. You're the real God. Oh my gosh.
She's God's bride.
Yes. Oh. Hey, they can't say that. When people say to me, "What did you do with your life?" I married God. What else was there needed? Nothing else. I didn't need to do anything else.
That's
Satisfied. That's
it.
it.
Yeah.
I can die now. Put it on my tombstone. She lived a soulful life as the bride of God.
Yeah. It's September now. Well, almost. I'm already. No, it actually is. Never mind. It is September now, and I know we're gearing up for Halloween and everything. And I know Corpse Bride is a really big deal, but we've replaced that with God's Bride, Ashley, the mirror, here live in the flesh. One time only event for tonight's beautiful award show. So yeah.
She's stuck with that, and I love it. The mirror. I'm going to dress up as that for Halloween. The mirror.
You know what? Real quick, side tangent. I do actually have, like, one day, if you ever desire to, I saw this picture of this character and I was like, you were born for this. Like, literally, if you wore this, if you looked like this, if you got like a costume and dressed up like this, I would worship you. I would kiss your feet and I would beg you for forgiveness for all the sins that I've committed and humankind has committed. And you can forgive all of those things because you are also a God. And that God is called Jean Grey, I believe her name is. And apparently she's an X-Men. And she and you were made to play her. In a movie, you were made to dress up like her. Jean Grey, yeah, gorgeous. Oh, gorgeous woman. And I just saw her and I was like, Ashley, I did not know you were I did know you were superhuman. They literally made it off of you. It looks just like you. It's actually insane.
Jean Grey.
Yeah. I'll show you a
need to
picture
Google
later.
this when I'm
Yeah.
Yeah. Please do.
Yeah.
But you don't need
But,
to kiss my feet. Please.
no, I will. You can't stop me.
I'm not a foot person. I can't
But
just
I
have
am
a
now.
foot person. Oh my gosh. I'll be running away. I'll be like, she's like, let kiss those feet.
Yeah.
No.
Oh gosh. But yeah, before we get
I have a big head
on,
because of you.
you have a big head because of me. Good. Needs to be bigger.
Matt, like Queen of Hearts size. Is that what we're talking? From Alice in Wonderland?
I'm thinking, I don't know what it's called in English. So I should not say it. Never mind. I have no idea. Oh yeah. You know those like hot air balloons, but they're not hot air balloons. They're like bigger. In Germany, we call them Zeppelin, but I don't know what it's called in English. So just forget what I said.
So you're talking about a hot air balloon, right? The ones that are
Yeah.
powered by the fire.
Yeah.
So you want
And
my
that's
head
how
to
big
be
I'll
that
make
big?
your brain because of all the compliments I'll give you. Even bigger than that, honestly. We can make the whole Earth. How much does the whole Earth cost?
I feel like my body would like completely detach from my head at that point. It'd be just a head. My body's just this tiny, tiny little thing in the air with my feet My arms are. Well, that's all you see is this tiny. I can't see. You got to get like the binoculars. Oh, I see feet. Oh, it's a body. Oh, geez.
Yeah.
This is just it's starting to sound a little like Dr. Seussy, like a book that should have happened. The human head that grew too big for Earth. Yeah, that's actually, don't steal it. My head, not yours.
Yes. I like that. You're so talented and creative, my friend.
That's because I married your brain.
Yeah, right.
So,
God.
exactly.
That's the perks, guys, when you marry God.
That's exactly right. Wait a second, that's not an open invitation. This isn't, an invitation for everyone else to join. It's just me.
Right, yeah. One and only, guys. I'm off the market. It's gone.
Exactly.
Too late. God is married. She's a woman and she's married to a woman.
Exactly.
I love your glare into the camera right now. You're like, don't even think about it.
Yes, I need the collective to know. I'm a soft pillow, don't worry. This conversation actually also merges into our conversation for today. The whole married to her brain and all of that, like how it merges into this conversation is referencing to our friendship and, the evolving of it and the, I guess, experiences of it that we have talked about in some form, but not to this depth, not to the reality of the human experience and how we dived into the sea. And are you like taking a dive? Is that what you just did? Oh my gosh, it's the Little Mermaid. We
Yes.
both just jumped into the Atlantic and we just accepted wherever we were going to go and, go from there, which also, yeah, thank you. You can talk now.
That was it for today. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.
I'm done.
No, you're absolutely right. Before I get started, though, I do want to say one thing. I do feel very light and fluffy right now because Ashley has healed me. But if in case I sound a little bit like tired or different today, or even look different today, I hope not. I tried very hard to put my face together, but just like a little puzzle piece. There's the eye. Just pop it on in.
I saw her beforehand. You all missed it. She picked up like one part and she like clicked it in and then clicked the other part in, the other part, and then started gluing. Yeah,
glue.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did a good job. Gorilla
It
glue.
was yes. Yeah. Not sponsored, but if you want to, we're here. But no,
I do that with my hair. Gorilla glue.
Oh gosh, don't get me started with Gorilla Glue and hair because there was like a whole thing on the internet a couple of years ago.
I know what you're talking about. The lady who glued her wig on, I think, with Gorilla Glue.
Oh gosh.
Oh, poor thing.
I just have this song in my head now. My hair, it don't move. Anyway.
It's like, look, it's not moving.
Oh gosh. No, if I just am a little bit different, it's because I'm currently recovering a little bit from my health scare. Everything is fine, no worries. Just waking up the body and the nerves and the senses. But yes, today's discussion, we will be diving deep and down into the nitty gritty of the itty bitties. And in all seriousness, though, most of us, I think, first experience, if we talk about trauma and we talk about the root of everything, right, which we love to do on our podcast, most of our first experiences in relationship and subsequently with trauma is within our families, in the way that we were raised, in the dynamics we grew up around, or even in the unspoken rules almost of how love and care are expressed. And I think in a lot of ways, those experiences shape how our nervous systems respond. And often, we've talked about this a little bit here and there, those patterns carry into our adult relationships and friendships without even realizing at times. So this conversation that we're going to be having today is about what it is like navigating a new frontier like Stargate or Star Wars in relationships and in friendships, and noticing the patterns, holding space for each other's histories, but also learning how to not let the past run our present. And I truly believe that even if we've been shaped by trauma or family trauma, we're not doomed to repeat it. And we are here forming relationships with each other to heal. And yeah, that's what we will be talking about with each other, how we can actually choose healthier ways of showing up for ourselves and each other and our loved ones, and the process of all of that to go from not having it to having it. And yeah, let's dive deep into space or water, wherever we go.
Cue intro music as we take a swim down the ocean. I gotta get back up.
Felt very David Attenborough.
Was that David Attenborough?
Yeah.
Attenborough. What's his name again? David
Attenborough.
Attenborough. It's
I
conflicting
so.
with the Aussie accent. David Attenborough.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening. It's like, it's just, I don't know. My English language is malfunctioning. That's what I call it now. It's just malfunctioning.
That's fine. We're still in like form retrogrades, so it's hard to communicate sometimes.
I'm always in a retrograde, it seems. It just never ends. Even though the way that I speak is actually a part of my own journey. Sometimes when I don't abbreviate my words or I struggle to speak is actually a part of, my life story. So, and I had to tell someone off about that too in the comment section. And I was so glad. I was like, yeah, your experience is not universal, love. When we had a commenter that decided to say something about how I speak, and I was like, oh, wow. People with perfect vocabulary. Well, everyone's just like you, Carol. Everyone is just like you. I did say that recently to someone who made a comment on my video, and I think they deleted their comments or they either blocked me. Wish you well anyway. But they made comments that because they don't experience beauty standards or the oppression from it, that it's a load of bullshit. And that safety is a concept that I'm just using for victimhood. It was along those lines and more as well was said. And all I could think was every single word that you're saying is coming from just you. So it's coming from them. But I mean their entire experience. You're speaking just from you. Is there any part of you that can expand further on from that? And even when I explained that, they still had the audacity to use victimhood and that every woman is in victimhood when they act this way. And they also had to say that nine out of 10 men prefer women to be natural. And then when I told them that women don't exist for that, they said to me that I clearly don't care about men. So I said to them,
congratulations. This is your victim award. Come up to the front row.
Actually. See, I love your brain. See, that's why I married her brain, because I didn't think of that. And I said to this person after, like, and that's when they blocked me. That was the last comment that was made. I said to them, no matter the gender, no one lives for the preferences of others. We're not here for that. We're not here to just like revolve our entire life around someone who likes natural more. Oh, great. I'll just shift my entire human existence for you, Stephen. Yeah, I'll just throw all my makeup out and no longer use deodorant, because if you're talking about natural, well, I'm not shaving. Oh, there
Free the
goes all
bush.
that. Yep, free the bush in all places. Bad luck, Stephen. You prefer the natural. That's what you get, Stephen. Just there's even if you start small, just know where it starts. It starts knowing that you're on a planet with over 8 billion people, and that's over 8 billion different experiences. So someone hasn't fallen. Let's say you see a pothole there and you think, oh, no one's going to hit that because I don't hit that. We'll hit it because we have nighttime. We also have traffic, and we have people that don't see it. And I'm one of them. I have hit plenty of potholes, even though my mind has told me the pothole is on the left, avoid it. But then I get sidetracked, and then before I know it, I feel it. And I'm like, oh, I have to accept. So, yeah, just to add that into it too, your experience is not universal for any of us.
I think that that is a beautiful statement to make because it highlights something that I think is key with navigating. Obviously, we're gonna talk about it a little bit more, but I think just based on what you just said, it highlights the exact problem that we're having. It's like people, and I'm not gonna say it's everybody because it's not everybody, but I think a lot of us have gotten into this almost like unhealthy relationship with independence, maybe. And maybe it's not just independence, maybe it's also just settling for less, that you then walk around with, and by settling for less, let me expand that for a sec. With not having actual people show up for you, make time and space and effort for you, and then you walk around life projecting that onto other people, not hearing them, not honoring their experiences in life, and thus you cut yourself back off from actually forming not just great conversations and connection with another human being, but also from you experiencing life throughout the eyes of another soul, and that sounds very deep, but like genuinely, you walk around with this, I don't even want to say an ego complex, but just like you did this and you did that and blah, 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 blah. But what is that actually bringing you? All it just kind of represents is how unhealed and how immature you sound when you can't even have an open conversation with another individual, whether you know them or not, and honor their experiences. And I think that plays into the conversation today because relationships are, like I said, the places where we heal, but they're also the places where we grow and learn about ourselves. And if we can't have difficult conversations, or if we can't have honesty and openness for somebody else's experiences, how can we ever get anywhere at all as a humanity? So, yeah. I do have a question for you, though, my friend.
Oh,
Um,
interview time.
not interview, but just like an opening, maybe. When or where do you feel like this has played out in your life? Or in what ways do you feel like this has played out in your life where the openness wasn't there before in terms of experiencing yourself, being honored, being who you are, and having people support that for you?
I just want to say first that I'm a big fan of your work.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for asking me that question. And I actually thought about today before we even started this podcast. I thought, I'm going to ask Nina some questions about this topic. And I was like, yeah, so I'm going to also reciprocate and, just be prepared for questions as well. uh, let's just say that when you know, to all of those that are listening, what, as I've said many times on episodes, what it was like growing up. And I know that it's an expansion. Not everyone had this experience. There would have been people out there that had some forms of awareness and were able to accept the reality of that awareness. Were able to make decisions, even really tough ones, to validate the reality. But I do think from the many people who have come out and spoken from their own stories, a lot of it resembles the uncomfortability, the I'm going to say ignorance, but in a lot of ways, I feel like society chooses this mostly because of survival. They choose not to see the acts of, like the violent acts of human beings because of how they respond to it and not being able to cope with how they would respond to it. I'm not saying everyone, but you know what? Because it just popped into my head. But I find it interesting how we got to that place because people see the violent acts as the uncomfortability, right? But will continuously ignore it and allow it to happen. But that is not the true uncomfortability, the true heinous acts. That's not the true problem that we should feel uncomfortable over. I don't know the history yet of how human beings got to this point of allowing inhumanity to exist. I'm obviously open to learning 100%. Especially one part of it that I do know is let me say it again. One part of it that I do know is attachments are a really big thing. Having attachments to people, especially as women, we release oxytocin, and attachments can be completely blinded by the thought that it's love. So when we are experiencing this attachment and we have so much oxytocin that's a part of this, and our nervous system starts to evolve itself around that person, we can miss the things that are in the front of our faces. We can miss the things that we need to be seeing. So I do have like some awareness on this stuff. But the reason why I'm saying this is because I'm interested in the backstory of how human beings got to these places where many of us are now having to find ways to live with the extreme invalidation that occurred. The ignorance, the enabling, the abandonment, the neglect on those lines. There is some sense of blame that I don't have much anymore towards a lot of people, and that's truth. But there's also another side of me that is understandably angry and thinks about it a lot, you know. It's just it's in the middle. It's in the middle, you know. There were there was always the presence of invalidation through my existence, through my life. There was always the presence of uncomfortability, the presence of ignorance, the presence of enabling. Even if I wasn't what's the word?
Cognitive.
Even if I had no cognitive awareness on these words and the understanding of the behavior, there was always the abandonment. That was, I guess, the main thing. Because when you don't see someone else's experience, you're abandoning their space, you're abandoning it to themselves. And that leaves a lasting impact. Like, you know what it feels like, even if other things represent that, like loneliness, as an example, and neglect, they all kind of conjoin, right? Abandonment has been a really big thing that I've had to work through. Not even work through. I'm trying to change that language myself, but just find my way through. I'll say that. Where can I find the safety for myself in this? Acknowledging that abandonment did happen, but I can't change it. I can only set the boundaries and the tone for what I'm not going to tolerate in my life now. That's what I can control, is who steps into my space, how they treat it, and what I do about it. That's what I can control, but I can't control the years of abandonment that happened from teachers, from people, from adults that were meant to protect, from people that you thought were going to have your back, called themselves family. You know, you grow you grow up with this ideology, and I don't know where it came from as a child. Maybe it's the fact that you see them as the authority because they're the ones that take care of you. So maybe it's an automatic thing of a child just expecting, without knowing that they're expecting, but desiring that to be seen, heard, and validated. So maybe we automatically were in that position of, well, if something happens to me, they've got my space. And then you learn early on that people don't even have their own spaces. It's too hard for people to have anyone else's. That's one factor, obviously. I'm probably going like all over the place with this question. There's just so much there that it's so hard sometimes to stick to like one thing. But yeah, it's been a majority of my life thing that I've had to really find my way through. And it's difficult too because it shows up, let's say the past experiences tries to show up in any new spaces that come in. And that's where Nina comes into the picture with this, because I had to get vulnerable with her in ways that I do not feel comfortable getting vulnerable with people, because I have gotten vulnerable with people before, even when I didn't want to. Oh, geez, that was mostly the thing, is that I didn't want to, but I was in such a heightened state of a manic. Sometimes I'd hit the manic part of a depressive episode. And if someone was around, or a PTSD episode, I couldn't control it. And sometimes that was the case, and they'd see it. And I would just be, I would mention things in that moment and just get it off my chest and then regret it later on because they can't hold space for it. And you see that physically happening in front of you, is that you've told someone this for the first time and you realize, without actually knowing what that is, but I realized that they couldn't hold space for it. And that was also another experience of constantly, experiencing people who can't hold space for pain. I'm not even saying trauma, I mean just pain. Can't hold space for that. A lot of ideologies, a lot of belief systems, emotional unavailability. That's why I said I don't have a lot of fault, but I also do as well in terms of anger and resentment, even 100%. So I'll let you speak and then we'll continue on. So I hope that answered your question. Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe. Yeah, you did. You did.
You fifth.
I think when it comes to me, typically before we hop on and record something, I tend to think about it a long time and be like, this is something I need to bring up, and this is something that I need to bring up. But today I just kind of allowed myself to sit down and flow with it. I don't really, because there's so much to talk about.
Mm.
Really, I can just pick one of the many 5,000 subjects that are just sitting right there. But I think the best way that I can start off my aspect or my half in this discussion is just start with myself, really. And that is, I think for a very long time, and this is something that I've had to learn over and over again in different ways, is how much I self-sacrificed for attention or love or affection, etc., etc. And it started for me in childhood. And honestly, I can't really think of any particular moments that I can talk about or want to talk about on the pod, but it was an overall experience of just not feeling seen and not being heard, which, you know, I hear myself say that, and I know that a lot of people go through that, but I also know that there might be an overwhelm when people hear, I don't feel seen, I don't feel heard. And so kind of want to break that down for a little bit and just say, um, as a child, and I think I've mentioned this before in a previous episode, you don't really have the mental fortitude to say if it's an adult or somebody who is in a position where could be a teacher, could be anybody, but essentially an adult individual that is in a position of more power, more knowledge, and more responsibility to make sure that you're okay and you're protected. You don't really have the mental fortitude as a child to understand when an adult person acts in a way that is not beneficial for you as the child. And so if you go through a hardship or an adult has said something or not done something or did something terrible, et cetera, you don't think, oh, this adult did a wrong thing. You think through feelings, and that
Mm.
is, oh, I feel really bad that this person, or I trusted them and they hurt me. What did I do wrong? That's how our brains work as children. We don't go further than that. We, especially if it's, I don't want to say systemic, but if it's repetitive behavior, you don't go, oh, this and this person, this parent, this individual is doing a wrong thing and that's on them. No, no, no. That's an adult brain. Child brain is, they're doing this thing and they're pushing me away, or they're not giving me attention, or they're raising their voice, or this and this is happening. What did I do wrong, and how can I make sure this doesn't happen again? And then you start treading on glass, essentially. That's kind of how you start. And I think we've talked about this, I think, with people pleasing and how that leads into that. But for me personally, I think the patterns of seeking attention or seeking love and seeking affection, connection in any way, really, started from, like I said, childhood. And the way that it repeated itself or showed up is in unhealthy friendships. And it was really interesting because for a very long time in my life, I didn't have friends. I had, like schoolmates, and sometimes we get along, most times not. But I was very much the outcast growing up, which I don't feel bad about now. But at the time, obviously, it hurt immensely because I made it an identity thing, right? Something is wrong with me. Everybody else has friends except me. And when I did have friendships, they would be manipulative, or they would steal from me, or they would bully me, or talk behind my back, et cetera, et cetera. And so my setup, I think, from childhood to, I would say, probably like mid-teens, wasn't very good when it comes to forming connections and how to communicate and how can I show myself and feel safe in this environment. I didn't even know what that looked like or that felt like. And so when I started making a group of friends, I would say mid to late teens, that kind of stuck around a little bit. I started trauma dumping. And that's a word that's very commonly used, sometimes, correctly, oftentimes not. But that was the way that I, kind of like found myself. I'm like, okay, these people have been around now. I feel like I can open up about something and then I trauma dump. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because I think obviously do it correctly, talk to people correctly. Trauma dumping is not always great, considering the circumstances and the time and place and everything. But at the time, I was just a child still seeking connection, and I did not know how to share myself in a healthy way. And I still have friends from that era of my life, of like teenagehood, but into adulthood and into my connection with Ashley as well, and many other people that are no longer in my life, I had to repeatedly learn that, well, several different lessons really, but I had to repeatedly learn that you shouldn't either hold yourself back who you are and how you feel and what your situation may be, whether that be trauma, whether that be health, whether that be anything in particular, whatever concerns you, you shouldn't have to hold that back and kind of negotiate how much a person is willing to take, and how much a person is willing to accept you, and how you and even having the fear that if you were to actually share who you are, that that wouldn't be accepted. And I think long term, like globally speaking, I think we all struggle with that, right? We all struggle with being in spaces where we sometimes feel imposter syndrome, or we feel like, do I really belong here? Are these people actually there for me, or do they just want something from me? And unfortunately, I'm going to stop it here and I'm going to let Ashley talk before I take over the entire thing. But I just want to say that I've definitely had to navigate many different types of relationships. And I just found out over and over again that you don't really win when you don't share who you are. And the people that care and the people that actually really wanted to be there and support you will do so and will learn how to do so and will learn how to listen and be there and really hear what it is that you're seeking or talking about, or the thing that hurt you, et cetera, et cetera. And um, to kind of come up to present day reality, Ashley in our friendship is a really big player in that healing. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'll pause because I have a lot more to say. But you go ahead, my friend.
Mission. Hmm. That's something that Nina and I think, went through quite a fair bit in terms of how we show up in each other's spaces. And, we've had plenty of conversations, and I've had to bring plenty of conversations to her because I solely believed that, because she has her own healing, she has her own human experience, and she's navigating through that. And it wasn't anything to do with me in the sense of me being like, oh my God, I'm like da 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 da, and I'm like it's just about me. It was the fact of I didn't want to make something that was already hard harder. And I said this to her where I was like, I feel like while I'm trying to figure out what's happening with me, what has been happening with me for majority of my life, while I'm trying to understand and come to the realizations and the knowledge of all of this, I feel like sometimes it's just too much onto your space. Because I'd be messaging her, for days upon end when there's always something happening, or when I'm going through like certain states of mind and just constantly, seeking like help and needing to be in that space. But, you know, I had other spaces, but Nina was the one that I went to the most. And you recognize that, like I recognized and I knew that it wasn't just me going through this human experience, it's someone else, but I always felt too overbearing and too overwhelming. That's why I
Mm.
said that a lot of people struggled to hold my space. And in a lot of ways, I don't blame them because they have their own human experience going on. And I said this in an episode where a former friend ended the friendship with me because of multiple reasons that I take and took full responsibility for. But I also knew it was because what had been experienced between that person and I was something really serious, and it was to do with me. It was something that I did, and they witnessed that. And it was a lot. And even though they didn't say it, I knew, right? And I had to come to the really hard realization that it's just people are having their own human experience. And there's just I can't even handle this. And I did say this to Nina, where I said to her, I can't even handle this. So how can anyone handle something that I can't handle? Like, I'm
That's
not
why we're
coping with
that's
myself.
why we hold it together. Like we're like a little, like that's four hands holding it up.
Where he just said that was why we're gonna hold it together, like kumbaya moment kind of thing. That's I mean, in some ways that's what she said. I think you can, if you remember what you said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I feel. Yeah, it's
Well,
never overbearing. It's never, I never see. Okay, I want to let you talk. I don't want to. I don't want to take over, but I'm gonna
it's
just say
for
this.
both of us to go back and forth on
Yeah,
the reality of this, you know. It was back and forth anyway.
that's the thing though. It's a back and forth, right? It's you are living life, I am living life, people are living life, and it's about finding a balance between supporting each other as we go through stuff. Because you've
Mm,
been the main person that has told me this before. It's like, just because I'm going through stuff doesn't mean that you can't talk about what's going on with you. And that was a really big step for me in my life to realize that, because I used to be in dynamics where only one person was heard or only one
mm,
person was making the conversation. I was just like, yeah, yeah, okay,
mm.
yeah. And that was something that I really, like, I had to grow out of within my own personal journey. And I'll get into that in a bit. But, we're here to hold each other through life, and life is not
Yeah.
easy. Life is not soft all of the time, right? We can hold each other through the light and the dark and navigate through that, and communication is a really big key with that. And of course, there are boundaries there, but like, I think, at least when I speak for myself, I don't shy away from the hard stuff because it is something that I've learned how to face in my own life. And I know what it feels like to be kind of just left to your own defenses, and not have any support whatsoever. And so I don't shy away personally when somebody's having a hard time, for instance, because for me, it's not quote unquote heavy or quote unquote too much or, whatever. It doesn't scare me off because I know that this is life. And I think we are actually, as a collective, holding each other back if we're only friends or only family members or only, whatever the relationship is, only present in somebody's time or in their life when everything is rosy. Or like if something starts to go bad, oh, good luck, chin up, you can do it, and then disappears for 5 years. Like, I don't think that that's how we grow, not in relationship with each other, not ourselves, and not as a human species. So, in my eyes, it's about finding a balance. It's not about being too much or too little. It's just about, okay, what does this person need? How can I best support them during this time? And how can I show up and make sure that they know that I'm hearing them, and that they're seen? And Ashley always jokes, is like, I'm going to cry. I can't believe you just said that because this and this scared me. And I was just like, listen, I get it. I get it. I feel the same way. And I think a lot of us do. But it's not about shying away from the hard shit and then suppressing ourselves and making ourselves be smaller or feeling like, oh, I can't talk about this because it's too much or it's too heavy. Like, no, we can talk about it. If now is not the right time, let's get together at a later point in time and talk about this shit. But that's how we live and how we grow and how we heal. So that's just my opinion about that.
Well, in reality, we talk a lot about people having capacity, and I do acknowledge capacity, but at the same time, we have to acknowledge that you're in a human experience where a lot of things are happening, even when we're advocating against it. There are still human beings that are doing heinous things, and it's going to happen every day. And when you have friends, like when you have people come into your life, they're going to bring their own human experience with them. So, how do you hold space for something that you haven't experienced before? How do you hold space for something you may have never heard of before? So, I think if you want to shorten yourself to a capability, if you want to diminish yourself to a capacity, then what kind of spaces are you only able to hold space for? Is it the good times? Is it someone having a cold or a flu? Is it, you know, maybe the capacity is a breakup or something along those lines? But even so, society struggles with grief.
Mm.
It struggles with seeing externally of the links between a person and just how much people have to work through those links when they break up. Like I told you before with oxytocin
See.
and how a nervous system constructs itself into the space of that person. And all of a sudden, when that breakup happens, someone has to completely rewire their nervous system. It's more than just this narrow pathway that a lot of people travel down. So when I say this, it's not within a fault, but the very things that you want, which is to be seen, heard, loved, whatever joys that you have, has to be within the awareness that this human experience is always happening. So what do you do about it? How do you hold space for it with other people for them to hold space for you? All I've ever known from people who weren't able to hold space for me, they were the very people that wanted a space to be held for them. And I mean, I did not do it in the right way sometimes, and that's in full acknowledgement. But in the ways when I did, it was there. But obviously, it couldn't be reciprocated because there was a limitation on just how much they could hold, which is hard. It's really hard to go through. That's why I said I've been around a lot of people who they cannot look too externally from themselves because they don't know how to emotionally hold space for everything else that's happening. And I know that it's also due to survival. I'm aware that it's due to how our society runs itself, to capitalism. We're more stuck in the space of surviving ourselves, too much so to worry about anyone else's. But again, I can acknowledge that even myself, in the struggles that have happened as well with that side of life, like financials and shit, acknowledge that while also the fact that, as I said before, Nina comes in with her own human experience. She comes in with her own stuff that she's navigating through and trauma that she's experienced and pain that she's had. If I were to turn around and, there were certain things that I had to learn how to hold space for along this journey as well. And that's okay. It's forever learning, right? With Nina's experience, there were some things that I actually didn't go through myself. I have not been through. And when she went through it, it was a learning experience for me how to hold space for that. That not doesn't work for me, that works for her because it's something she's experiencing. And it's natural for me to want to, you know, protect her and travel to a
Protector,
certain place and speak to
defender.
someone. Yes. Mirror. Protector, defend, just put my mirror self in front of somebody and let them see their behavior. You know? It's become a natural thing to do while also being open to expanding that. Because you can also be a hero and be wrong at the same time. You can make mistakes still, right? You can have the heroism and you can have the I do the right thing, but you'll also make mistakes in that too. Like it's just a learning journey, as I always say. So I do hold space for people's learning journeys. That's what I'm saying, is I do hold space for it. I just have struggled to hold space for my own because it's easier to do that for everyone else than it is for myself, which is why having a lot of these conversations with Nina and being like, hey, I know that you're going through something. And even though I tell you that, even though I'm experiencing something, I'm not going to block you out because of that. Even though I say that to you, I just feel like a hypocrite because, yeah, I feel like I'm overwhelming you with a ton of shit that's happening. And this is the other thing, too, that I really found difficult is that there were so many moments where there always was something happening. And it was consistently, she'd say, like, what's going on today? How are you? And in my head, it was the depiction between, do I say, oh, yeah, I'm all good? Or do I say, oh my gosh, tower moment every day? Do I just be honest? It's the confliction and the fear of the limiting beliefs and the thought patterns of, I'm going to overwhelm this person. They're going to have enough. She's going to turn around and say, this is too much for me. I can't cope. And I said that to her too, because we recently had a conversation about something. I brought something up and then she responded back to that. And then I said to her, I just feel like it's not reasonable for me to say this because, you've got your own stuff going on in your life and I just feel stupid, but this is what I feel and I don't really know what to do with this and if I should be saying this. It felt so chaotic for me to say this stuff because then I was met with,
It was brave. That's how I
it was
see it. It was brave. Let me reconstruct it for you, my friend. No. It is brave to me, in my opinion, to have feelings, whatever they may be, right? And not know what to do with them, but still have the courage to bring it to the other person and be like, this has been going on. Let's talk about it. Or like, this is how I feel right now. And I want you to know I'm not really quite sure where to place it or what's going on, but this is what's coming up. And the other party, obviously, I think I can only speak for myself, but I think I take things like that really seriously, obviously, because it's like, okay, this is a person that I care about and I hold space for them and I always try to. Um, how can I make sure that they're heard? And if I'm in a space where I can't do that right now, I make sure that I articulate that in a way that is healthy, which I'll get into that in when Ashley is done, but like it's not it is always scary to brave the distance of what is and what isn't, and to not know how another person will react to what you say. Trust me, I've been there, but like it's a brave thing to do when you do go through with it. And I think, I mean, you have to say this yourself, obviously, but in my opinion, when I've brought stuff to you that were hard, and you've held space for it, that's how I've healed. And that's how I'm like, oh, I'm kind of like correcting the patterns of the past where it's like, okay, if I say how I feel, I won't get punished for it. I'm actually, heard here and you actually care. And I always try to give that in return as well, because it is the life of a human being, the soul is very complex and very difficult. And if you have somebody that you can share that with, whatever it may be that's going on within, and that space is held as Ashley has held it for me, that is, at least in my eyes, really monumental and really healing. I don't know. That was just my thing. But you go ahead.
it's a really interesting experience to have the opposite of what you're used to, as you said, what we're used to in society is meeting people's spaces with that front performance of, you know, be positive, as we say, toxic positivity and that. Be positive, let it go, don't let your past override you. But the nervous system doesn't work like that, though. Words are just words to the mouth, but to the nervous system, it's all about the functioning of your feeling and the experiences that you've had. Words cannot deconstruct something that has lived in constant fight, flight, freeze. shame, etc. And that's something that I had to realize too, holding a fault system around me and a shame and a guilt around myself, and thinking that there's no one in this world that could possibly be able to hold my space. And there have been people that have said, you know, maybe you just think that it is too much. And that's because it is for any human being. For any human being to experience anything that is painful more than once is a lot. Even just once is a lot. You know, even experiencing things that are joyful can also be a lot, can be overwhelming because of your nervous system. It's more than just the front value that we always seem to take. We always seem to go by face value. No, there's a full system within us that also hears you, that also interprets that, and that also folds itself in how you walk through your existence and how people externally from you treat your space. That's why sometimes you may feel unsafe around certain people, because it's not just you in your mind thinking that. Your body feels their space as unsafe. It can sense the familiarity from the spaces before that have made you feel that way. This is a nervous system. That's why there's just so much more to this than just let things go, let things be. It's more, even our words, there's so much more to it. But in truth, as Nina said, you're not too much to people that know the human experience. And I don't mean know as in know everything. I mean they just know. They're just aware that it's a human experience and anything can happen. There are a lot of people that I've come across over the years that are very sheltered and they live in bubbles. And I'm not saying that as a fault or a blame, because it's a part of the human experience, right? It's an experience that people are having because they think that that's the safe way, that's the protective way, that's what's going to keep people in that mode of connection. And maybe it works for them. Who am I to say otherwise? But what I do know is that a bubble, right, can look like glass to people externally from you. When they step into the space, they don't step into your space, they step in front of you and they can see it. And then how you talk, how you treat them makes it look like it's glass, untouchable. And honestly, why would you want to if you're not feeling great in that center, if you're not feeling heard or seen, if someone's not even willing to acknowledge that, hey, this is what I've been through. I can't change it. This is how I feel about it. I can't change it. You know, all I've got really is to figure out the tools myself. A lot of this journey has been for, and I can only speak for myself, about figuring it out myself. All the tools that was needed, all the tools that are needed to build a foundation. What even are they? I don't even know how to build a foundation. So you got to learn to do that. And there's nothing more supportive than having people around you that can validate your build, no matter how it turns out, that can validate what you're building, that can validate whatever tools you use, even if they think that it's, you could probably use this tool. Well, I don't really know that tool because I'm just building my toolbox. But hey, that might be a tool I can use. I'll put that in and see how it works for me. That's why I say that everything's guidance. So I'll let Nina talk, and I'll just say that what Nina said and what I'm saying too, in my realization, as much as I feel nervous system wise, I can feel the unsafety within it. But in truth, my words are truthful. So what I'm saying is 100% true, but I also am validating the resistance to it. Is that you're not too much. Society just has to learn how to expand beyond themselves and realize that we actually need it. We need it for a human experience that is always happening.
I I thought about how I was going to have this conversation today, and I something that I really want to hone in on, and I don't know if it makes a difference, but this is I can only speak from my own perspective and my own life experiences and stuff like that. But I have always felt a little bit out of place, even when I was a kid, because I always felt like I felt a lot more than other people around me did, or I was more observant of certain behaviors and certain stuff like that than other people around me were. I think even recently, I just kind of had like a moment where I questioned some things about society, and there's a lot of parts of me, let me say it like this, that are still very much child state, but not in a toxic way. I think in a fully realized adult version of myself way, in the sense of I don't understand why injustice exists. I don't understand why people are cold to each other. I don't understand why people don't support each other and love each other and aren't there. And I know that there are people who may hear that or, meet me and think, oh, she's naive. Oh my God, she's too soft or whatever, and kind of brush it off because this is a dog eat dog world and that's just the way it is. But I think that that's a cop out. And the reason I say that is because I personally, and this may, evolve as I keep growing and experience myself in life and grow outside of what I've always known. But I see myself very much as a lover. And that's kind of always how I've identified myself at the core of who I am and everything that I do. I just see myself as a lover and I love deeply and I love strongly, and my love has no bounds. And living life like that um, is not easy. like, I think there's a little bit of commentary around it online where it's like, if you're a lover girl, your life is hard. And I don't want to, reinforce that narrative, but I will just say it's really hard living with an open heart in a world where people are not just only bruised from other bad people or other hardships, but also where people oftentimes can't accept the love that you give. There are people who can grow into it, who can grow comfortable with it, and then there are people who will never be because it's not what they're used to due to their own, like upbringing and childhood. And I've had to let go, unfortunately, or people let go of me where they were not capable of, and I don't say this out of ego, but just from observation, where they were not capable of letting that type of acceptance in. And sometimes in reverse, when it comes to my experiences of other people, I gave too much and I forgave too much. And at the end, I ended up being in a position where I felt like I was the idiot because it's like, well, I did this for you or I did that for you, and this is how you treat me. And sometimes, or a lot of the time, I think when it comes to my personal experiences, people haven't met me even halfway. They expect a lot, but they give a little. And so, being in the relationships or aka friendships that I am in now with Ashley and a few other people, it is really when nervous system is triggered or trauma triggers me, or I have like that nagging voice in the back of my head of something bad somebody said about me, and I'm like, this is why you can't do this because this and that, or they're gonna hate you because of this and this and that. I can laugh about it now, but obviously in the moment hits really hard. And so being in a connection where I feel safe enough to be like, okay, I'm aware with myself that I'm being triggered right now and I need a moment to just breathe and think through and like, okay, what's happening right now is not the thing that happened 10 years ago. I am in a safe place, but that's a process. Sometimes it takes a couple hours, sometimes it takes a couple days to get there. But the person that I'm with, the person that I'm speaking with, whether it be Ashley or anybody else, but in particular, I'm gonna just talk about Ashley because we're talking about each other. So I'm just gonna be here. I have always felt so safe to just be like, okay, I know you know what it's like to be activated. I know what I feel when I'm activated. So it helps me hold space when she's in a place of disarray because of, you know, whatever may be. And I know that she can hold space for me in that way as well. Um, and you know, sometimes it's not easy to have those conversations. It's really not easy when it comes to self because it's like there, I don't know if you feel this way, Ashley, but sometimes I feel that there's pressure and like, I need to say this now because if I don't say this now, I'm going to be forever eternally damned and I'm going to be the worst person on the whole entire history of the universe. Like there's this pressure that's there to just like explain yourself or show yourself or like mend something. And I'm learning because of the safety that Ashley has provided that I can sit in the uncomfortability of whatever it is, you know, if it's something that she's brought to me, like in the past or something where it's like, hey, you said something and this really hurt me. And I'm like, oh shit, I feel very uncomfortable right now. I have to sit in that. Or if I'm grieving, or if I'm holding her grief or helping her to hold her grief and it feels uncomfortable, I have to sit in that. It's not that I have to and like I'm being forced, but it's like I want to because I know at the other end, when we get through it, it'll help us grow, not just with each other, but independently within ourselves. And so I am gaining more courage in being who I actually am and showing who I am by sitting in the uncomfortability. And even if it has nothing to do with Ash, for instance, and I'm triggered by a past event that has absolutely nothing to do with what's currently going on, but I'm like, okay, instead of responding, I'm going to say this and I'm going to try and, you know, like calm myself because I know right now I'm not I'm not acting from the space of what this conversation is bringing up. I'm acting from the space of being triggered of something that happened 5 to 10 years ago, whatever, 2 years ago, in a conversation that's not even currently present, in a reality that's not present. And so I think when it comes to like the conversation of, you know, trauma informed relationships, whether it be friendships or whatever dynamic, whether it be childhood trauma, whether it be friendship trauma, whether it just be life being hard, it is really difficult to go through the uncomfortability. But I have learned through my own evolution in this friendship that, like Ashley has said, you are not too much. Because I, for a very long time in my life, lived my life this way. And if I'm being completely honest, I still have certain perspectives within that because it's like, I know not everybody will be able to hold what I have, whether that be in love and happiness or in grief. But I know that there are already people who can hold space for me and who have proven already that even when I felt like I was being too much with them, have still showed up and told me that it was okay and that I'm okay. And it's kind of recalibrating within my own sense of self of like, oh, it's actually okay to feel my feelings and to vocalize how I feel. And I won't be shunned out or I won't be, oh my God, she's talking about this thing for the 5 billionth time, which I felt that energy from other people before, you know, when I've went through a really hard thing. And that's why I think from a very, gosh, this was definitely a long time ago, but I'm just going to say this. I went through a time in my life where I got very sick. I couldn't work, got fired because I couldn't work because I was sick. And then my father died of cancer at the same time. And then I got broken up with. And so like that, all of that happened at the same time. And I held so much pain within myself. And I was like, I don't know where to go with this because I can't hold this. So I went to what I thought was a friend and I knew that there was only a limited amount of time that I could talk about this before it became quote unquote too much. And so I think it was like a week. That's typically what I've noticed with people when you talk about hardships. You can talk about it for a week. It's longer than a week. People start to be uncomfortable. And, in the process of that and experiencing that pain and constantly being like, okay, can't talk about this. I have to keep it to myself. I don't do that within my relationships to anybody else. And I think it's difficult and I think it's sad that people have to go through stuff in order to give that in other relationships, in other friendships, and in other dynamics because they themselves weren't given it. But at the same time, I'm glad to now have equal footing within my dynamic with Ashley. We can talk about hard things. The world's not going to blow up. We can have misunderstandings or we can have difficult conversations, whether it be between ourselves or other things in life. And I know that there's kind of like an anchor there. And that is for me not something that I take, advantage of. But as a quote unquote lover person that feels very deeply and loves very deeply, even when I know I shouldn't, even when I know I should walk away from something, I am eternally grateful to have a connection where I feel so held and so seen that even when I am triggered and I have thoughts of, she gonna hate me now, she's gonna hate me, she's gonna hate me. It's like, no, okay, just like calm down. Okay, let's take a breather. Even if she hates you, she can say that if she really feels that way, and we can work through it if she decides to, if she wants to. But like, let's breathe for a moment. Is this actually what's happening? Or is this just something that's coming up because of something that you felt from the past? And that's 99.9999999% of the time. And so it's really, it's a beautiful thing, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to. It's hard. It's not easy. And I think it does suck when we live in such a normalcy within toxic relationships of all kinds where that is not extended often, that kind of grace, that kind of care. But when you do experience it and you're not the only one finally constantly giving it, but you're receiving it back, it I don't know, it gives me more motivation to work through whatever it is that comes up, and it gives me more motivation to work through whatever is coming up within me and surpass that because I actually have somebody that believes in me. I have somebody that grounds me and that doesn't make me feel like I'm this, because this is something I used to identify with. I was like a lone island. That's how I used to walk through life. I used to think I'm just an island, everybody's a country. There might be some other islands, and with those islands I connected with, but then they, go away because they're avoidant. And then you're just like a lone island again, and then you're just in misery. But because of the past dynamics that I was in, I over-identified myself and who I am with loneliness when that is not an identity, that is a feeling, and that can pass. And I don't know, I don't have advice for anybody in terms of how to find these people because Ashley and I found each other through the most diluted possible weird way you could ever imagine. And yet it's funny because we're halfway across the world and we have the strongest bond than somebody I've been with, like in person for many years. And so it is a beautiful thing. I don't have advice on how to find these people. If you have that, let me know because I'd like to know more people who like this. But aside from that, it's just a regenerative relationship. That's the best way that I can describe it. And I'm glad to be in it and I can hold space when you go through stuff. And that's, I think holding grace for you and for anybody who is struggling is very much the key because you don't have to understand when what somebody in particular is going through, but you can still understand that they're in pain or that you're in pain. And how can I hold space for that? How can I make sure that I actually hear what it is you're trying to say, even if, and this is the caveat, and this is something I really, really am working hard to do, is how I communicate, how I talk, what words I use. And that is really hard for me when I'm in a triggered state. And Ashley does it so well. Chef's kiss. But it is something where it's like, okay, I am no longer in survival mode. You and I both are going through something. How are we communicating? How, and we give each other kind of leeway, you know, in terms of how we articulate with each other and what we are actually looking for, and how can we best, you know, hold space, have boundaries as well, but hold space and give each other the foundation where the other feels safe in the friendship. And I don't think that's hard. You know, it's difficult, but it's not hard. And I can't describe it any other way. But yeah, it's a difficult process when you come from trauma or bad experiences, but it's not hard because it's Ashley, because it's our friendship, because it's safe here.
Mm. I was actually going to ask you a question about triggers
Mm-hmm.
and the times where we found ourselves in that sort of face to face
Yeah.
of your own survival patterns and my own survival patterns, and it meets a wall.
Yeah.
We've experienced this a few times and having to figure out what do we do with this wall,
Yeah.
but we had to figure it out individually. And that's something we had to learn as well in order to start to do the whole it's us versus the problem sort of
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah.
And we have, and we've said this before on the podcast, that we don't come on here acting like we're lovers with no experience of quarrels, as they call it. They're not even quarrels. We're just two individuals who have grown in trauma, through trauma, and are deconstructing and finding out how to create a life outside of that.
Yeah.
And we're friends as we're doing that, you know. And I mean, I think we were both already on the path when we met, but I think we were both just sort of starting to take the journey fully, if I'm right to say that for you too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, definitely,
Yeah.
because relationships are not something I had experience with a lot. You know, like this is probably like the deepest it's been for me in my life thus far.
Yeah, same. It never could go any deeper because some people didn't value friendship like they do relationship.
Mhm.
Some people, as I said, they had the capacity, the limit of, like you said, can only talk about this now, but I'll expect you by the next day to move from it.
Yeah,
You know, it's a lot of that. It was a lot of that. It still is a lot of that. But like we're saying throughout this episode, we're two people that came together with our own human experiences, and that's what that is. How would it help Nina or I if we just acted like it didn't exist? And we both tried to do that at the start. We both tried to act like we're not just overwhelmed by our own experience and trying to navigate, well, this is a friendship, but I don't trust it sometimes, or I'm uncertain sometimes, or I don't know what to say to you sometimes, or I feel a certain way about it sometimes. It's working through the challenges of something that you've never experienced before in a way that it's not just your mind that has to process it, it's your system that has to process it. It's It's a very interesting journey, and it's been a very interesting experience. As you know, I say that to her all the time. I'm like, this is very interesting. This thing that's come up, and we're like talking about it, and I say to her, it's very interesting. It's like my favorite sentence, and I'm going to put on a t-shirt one day. Direct quote from Ashley, because that's all I can really say with a non-linear human experience, is that there are some things that are just interesting with how it happened. And I mean, for a lot of people that want to be in these spaces of friendship, I will say two things on this. First thing is that humanity is healing, but with how many people are in the world and with what's currently happening, it's just society has to keep finding its way, just like we as individuals do. So my guidance would be, and I know how people may take this. I'll say may, but honestly, you can only control the things that are within your own space. And I'm saying that with the acknowledgement that even when things come into your space, you can't fully control that either. But what you can control is who you are when these spaces become a reality. So what you desire from other people, are you also meeting that same quota that you have? That's where I started. That's where I started. I wrote down, especially for a partner, I wrote down all these things, what I desire in friendships, a partner, making sure that I'm also meeting them too, because how can I expect that from other people if I'm also not going to meet it? It has to be a two-way street, not a one-way street. People come with their own human experience, as I'm going to keep saying. And even to this day, we're both still experiencing things in our realities that are testing us outside of our friendship. So then when we come to each other, you know, why act like the external is not affecting, you know? Why put on a facade when we're human and we're not okay?
Yeah.
You know? Why? And I said that to myself once because obviously I still experience, understandably so, the cycling of it's just too much. It's too much for Nina. It's too much for Nina. And I mean, in other ways too, I say to myself, you know, you don't speak for Nina just
Thank
because you've
you.
experienced this.
Thank you. I like that voice.
Actually, I'll say in a second what I was going to say with that. But and the survival patterns that exist that I acknowledge sometimes speak so much louder than the space that I know it to be. And I think that's the thing with many people. And I think that's why we also, for those that resonate, we find it hard to acknowledge the existence of this. And I think that's why some people may look at us. I'm not saying it happens, but they may look and think, what a lie. What a lie. Because I've thought the same thing. I've seen other people's relationships and I've had thoughts on, yeah, love. Oh, love. Before I met Nina, it was like, love, interesting. What even is that again? Because what would I know it to be? What even is human decency? You know, what even is that? Human bare minimum? What is that? Your knowledge on it and your awareness of it. When you haven't had the picture of it, well, what's the image? You don't know what the image looks like until someone starts to put it together for you. But even you're resistant towards putting it together because that's terrifying. What do I do with it after that? What do I do with the overwhelming amount of love that you're giving me? I couldn't cope with that either with Nina sometimes. That she was showing me so much and I was just like, I'm sorry, like I get it, but I'm
Yeet.
overwhelmed. I love you, Ashley. Throw it on.
Oh,
She'll be like, I love you, Ashley. Like, tomorrow maybe. Yeah, there were those moments too. And sometimes still to this day, she'll say, actually, it was recently too, she said something. And then understandably, I could feel like a lot of emotions come to the surface. And I got really emotional over it, understandably so. That's not me saying that in a negative way too, because a lot of people, you know, they connect it with that and it's not negative. And I said to her, it's just weird to hear you say that, you know, even if a part of myself isn't fully internalizing it, because words, that's another thing too. So many words have never met action. That's an experience I've had in life as well. Words, no action, nothing external from that. So it's easy for someone to say, I love you. And I've had people say, I love you, but then they go ahead and they do something that hurts me. And it's like, Do you love me, or do you love my presence and what my presence gives you? And I didn't know that fully back then. There was no cognitive awareness on that one either. It wasn't until the years passed that I realized, you know, it's just, I'm a little conflicted with the people that are saying I care about you and I love you, but yet I cry over your space. I cry over you, and not in a good way. Like, your name makes me feel crap. Your name doesn't have that feeling of validation and groundedness. Your name makes my nervous system rattle. Your space makes my nervous system rattle. It's even that a lot of you know as well. You know that feeling, and you've had to make decisions from that. People will only ever see the decisions. They'll never see the no choice that you had to make that decision. They just see what's in front of them. And I want to say with that too, is that as someone who's had to move away from a lot of spaces, like, it's a thing that's happening these days, which I'm glad, because you can't force people to change. You can't force people to see something they don't want to see. So you've got to make the decisions that are hard, but you've got to do what you got to do by the choices that you don't have. You know, making decisions like removing myself from certain spaces because I just felt so bad being in those spaces, and I felt so inhumane. I mean, it's serious enough. And I said this to Nina once, and it still makes me sad that I even got to this point. But I remember saying to her once, I said to her, honestly, I wouldn't care if I passed away tomorrow. I wouldn't want them to do a funeral. I wouldn't want a tombstone. I'd want it to be.
It's okay, sweetie. Take a moment. Do you want me to stop?
I'd. There is no energy that I give to people who do not understand the decisions that I've had to make. Because when you get to a point of wanting to be forgotten and not wanting to be remembered, I would have been fine with that. If I had died, I wouldn't have wanted a funeral. I would have just wanted everyone to keep moving on with their life, because if I don't feel like a human now, why would you celebrate my life? Why would you celebrate a life that no one cared to even acknowledge? So I will never apologize for the decisions that I had to make from my life, and for me to keep living, but also just liking that I'm alive, liking that I'm here, and being able to accept people that offer the spaces like Nina does into my life, and not seeing that as a threat or a potential unsafety, or maybe it's a facade or a performance. You're not going through survival mode over something that has no representation of survival and is not riddled in that. It's just because you're so convinced that it looks like that because that's all you've ever seen, right? Many of you know this. Nina knows this herself, which brings me back to, I said this to her a few days ago. I said to her, the thing that I recognized living constantly through survival is that you think that someone is doing something even though they're not doing it. And you're convinced that all this stuff externally that's happening is against you. So it's always about you. And I recognize this pattern is that my mind, when Nina and I were having a certain conversation, my mind was convinced that, oh, she's going to no longer be your friend. Oh, that's it now. Yours are done. Well, you had a good run. Just say la vie, podcast is over, everything's done, your life is over. It automatically went to that space. And I said to myself, this is becoming an all about me thing. And I know you're doing that to protect me, right? But let's hear what Nina has to say. Let's open up the space and just hear what she says. She didn't respond that way. And I swear to you all, my mind went silent. Because the thing about me that I've realized with my survival is that it needs proof. And proof feeds regulation of my nervous system. It does. And sometimes I have to find other ways of doing that without proof, yes. But she has said things without even knowing that she said something that brought a tool for regulation, a tool to dismember the dysregulation to find regulation. That's something to acknowledge for any of you as well, is that you can be so convinced because it's all you've ever known that everything around you is out to get you, is against you, is talking about you, is thinking badly about you because of how unsafe you've been made to feel in this world around certain people. It can easily convince you that someone who's looking at you is thinking badly about you, yet from their perspective, they're complimenting you. Nina said it too, where I think you said something about it too on the lines of that. Either might have been between you, me and you, or you with someone else. I don't know. I'm pretty sure you said something about it.
Can't remember.
Yeah,
I'm senile.
I think you said something. But I just wanted to add that into it as well for you all, is when we struggle to find friendships like this, sometimes it's not because they don't exist, but it's because we feel too unsafe to see it.
Mm.
We feel too unsafe to acknowledge that it can exist and it can happen. And I hear that. I truly do. It's been such a process to validate like such a supportive space, and to feel human, to feel like the bare minimum is not asking for someone to climb Mount Everest, especially when you're around narcissistic people. I can add that in there too.
Yeah, it's the truth, and
Yeah.
um, it's there's so much I can say. I will try and say these two things because I think it's important. Um, I used to always be the fixer, in my relationship dynamics and all of them. And it's really wonderful when you have a space where, I mean, I guess I said it a little bit earlier, but you're not the only one who gives effort and cares. And like you said, Ash, there was a long time in my life where I felt like a monster. Truly, I did not feel human, because I was made to feel that way, and I was outcasted and I was bullied and all this stuff, right? But um, I've learned how to be a human being again, and I am who I am today because of the people that I have in my life. And listen, when I talk about something that I mentioned earlier, with like, there's no such thing as too much really for people who care. I definitely stand by that, but I've also been in dynamics where, like Ashley has said, it wasn't seen why I had to walk away from certain people. And that is really difficult. When you truly love somebody and you care, and you do everything in your power to just, try to justify certain actions or justify certain behaviors, and it just keeps coming back even though you've had the conversation, and you have to take that step of like, okay, I do not feel safe, this is not for me, I feel less in this dynamic, or I feel worse when I'm around this person, and you have to walk away, when that then blows up in your face, because that's what's happened to me, for you taking the stand and walking away, that can be some of the most traumatizing moments of life. And, holding space in the balance of the versions of myself that felt inhuman and felt like a monster and felt like everybody hates you, to the adult me now, the present me, and the person I continue to grow into, of like, it's okay, other people have emotions, and somebody can be angry, somebody can say stuff. It is not a reflection of you. And the people who care, and the people who, like you said, Ashley, actually want to do better will give proof of that in one way or another. And it's just a process, it's a balancing act. And listen, it's not perfect. I'm not perfect. I will never be. But even though Ashley called me God, I'm not perfect. But it is something that I am still learning how to balance at times. The perspective sometimes that can come into your brain that's like, does everybody just hate me? And then the other half that's like, no, that's not, everything is a little bit more nuanced than that. You know this, but like Ashley said, nervous system and the brain are not two of the same things. They work with each other, but you have to process everything in layers. And so, again, I come to the point of, it has been, honestly, I know a lot of people seek these types of connections in romantic relationships, right? Trauma-informed romantic relationships. But I actually think it is so much better for me personally to have this bond with Ashley in our friendship, because it feels safer than it would if it were a romantic relationship. And this is kind of like the base of a tree. These are the roots. And eventually it'll flourish into other corners of relational um, connection with other human beings, whether it be work or romantic or familial, etc. But these are the roots that we are growing, and it is an incredible privilege, in my opinion, to know Ashley, to know anybody, to be in relationship with anybody. But when you have somebody as wonderful as Ashley, it is really, it's a beautiful thing. There are no words for that. And, I will always continue to do my best in all my relationships. Um, and I'm really grateful when grace can be held when I need to grow, or, when there are difficult conversations, et cetera, et cetera. But it is the circle of life.
I was gonna say, like, when you're like, romantic relationship, and I'm like, ours is not romantic. Oh, what are we married for?
Of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, just in general terms with other people,
Yeah, jeez. It's not easy. We've said it so many times, and we'll say it a million times more, but it's not easy making these, like I've said, it's not even a choice in so many ways. It's essentially for your own survival, and it's something that humanity is struggling to grapple with, because love and family has been given a title and power over how we make each other feel, over the kind of spaces that we create for each other. The prioritization is staying together no matter how that environment is surviving. That is being prioritized above people. And we think we crowd it with this perception of love and care, and this is blood, family. Yet you have so many that are dealing with addictions, trying to cope and sustain themselves in something that they know they're struggling to survive in. It was not an easy decision, having to walk away from so many family spaces. That's a decision that I had to make. And you're dealing with countless of people that don't understand, but also they don't want to understand, because they just see the decision that you made. They don't see why you had to make it. They don't see what you were put through. They don't see that you didn't have a choice.
Right.
Because the thing too is that if I were to have continued to, try to be like everyone else would have liked me, but I wouldn't have liked me. And I would have been, I don't even think I would have been a version of me. I would have continued to be a version of them. It's not an individual experience that I wanted for myself anymore. So what do you do when you're stuck in spaces where people don't want you to expand without them actually being consciously aware that they're not allowing you to expand beyond their capability? Their capacity is the word. Because people too, they have a capacity of what they cope with in terms of who people are. Otherwise, if you're in love with, no, let me say it this way, if you have a love for nature and yet you're around people that find that weird, so all of a sudden they're projecting on you for expressing your love for nature. And it's like, well, that's what I love. That's a part of me, you know? So if you're not going to accept that, then there's a part of me that has to be suppressed, and that doesn't feel good. Because believe it or not, it impacts you when you can't fully be the expression of self with people. And I have been through this myself, is being in dynamics where I've started to notice when I became an adult and as time went on, but when I first started noticing it, I couldn't face it. I couldn't face it because I just wanted to belong somewhere. And belonging is the equivalence of abandonment, because you've been abandoned so much, you just want to belong no matter how that space shows up, right? But there was always something quote unquote different about me, obviously, you know, with early childhood trauma, which shapes a child who is developing into that trauma, and eventually you just mold through that, right? So there was differences with me growing up. And as a teenager, I still kept some increment of maybe my own self-expression, but majority of it just wanted to belong in the spaces of others. So you do whatever you need to, as Nina was talking about with her own experience of people pleasing, right? But when I started to heal after a few years, I realized that for me to continue to heal, I have to relinquish these spaces, because I can't heal where I'm not accepted. I can't heal where people are limiting me when I want to break free and find what actually brings me joy. Otherwise, I can't live on this planet, on this godforsaken planet. I can't live on this planet in this suppression that is just beyond, it's beyond one small part. It's my entire self. And the other thing that I've noticed as well is that people, that's what I was talking about at the start. We see it as a form of comfort, right? But it's really just, it's enabling. We enable really harmful shit to remain in some sense of safety and comfort. And I didn't want to participate in that either. And I do see that. And I thought to myself, I have two choices. I either stay and become a part of the enabling, or I leave, because I know what it is to be around people that enable bad behavior that should never have been enabled, and allow people to treat others heinously. And it's just allowed. I don't want to be someone. I don't want to ever be someone that allows violent acts towards another, or even just projections in general, and they're not allowed around me. Because how do you feel valid to harm another human being? And then there comes the consequence of that from people who are so focused on how it makes them feel, which is what I was talking about with the self and the survival, is that you're so focused on how it makes you feel and not by the reasoning of why they had to come to that decision in the first place, why we had to do this shit in the first place. But it's more about the upheaval that you're feeling because you can't cope with someone turning around and saying, I'm not going to be an enabler and I'm not going to allow you to keep thinking that I'm a silent observer like everyone else is and has been towards you. And this is something I've actually said to someone physically, someone that I know who plays victim cards and is very narcissistic. So I'm not one of them. You're so used to people being silent towards your behavior. That's what you're used to. That now that I don't partake in the silence, of course you don't like it because I'm the upheaval in something that you have found so much comfort in, which is in people's silence, so you can continue to do what you're doing. So you continue to hurt people and no one says a damn thing to you about it. And you know how the level that someone will go to when you start speaking up, and I've spoken about this plenty of times when it's not, it's a sense of, you know what it is? It's just it's just the bare minimum of human. It's not justice, it's the bare minimum of human to be someone that says, you're causing harm. Why would I tolerate that? You're actively hurting someone. You're participating in someone hearing your name and them being triggered by what you created, what you did to them. The amount of people that have, there's no fault. I don't hold a fault in some ways, but the amount of people that have looked at me and said things like, why do you act this way towards this person? Why do you do this? Why did you choose that? And I haven't explained because if I did, would you be able to hear me?
Mm.
And knowing the people that have asked, no. Even if I were to say and speak on the most heinous acts that were committed, would you be able to believe me and hold space for that? Because not being believed is also a big thing in this society, especially when you keep within a bubble aspect and you don't see beyond that bubble. So you find it hard to hold space and believe in something that someone's actively been through.
Also, if I may say, there is no reason to have to explain yourself in the first place. If you make
Mm,
a decision, you make a decision for you. And if that means you have to walk away from something or someone or environment, whatever, you don't need to explain yourself. That no, it's kind of like the same thing with a no is a no. A decision is a decision. And if you want to open up, you can. Obviously, you can ask, but you don't have to. You should never be made to feel like you have to explain yourself for making a good decision for your life or for yourself. And I think
yeah.
people have gotten very comfortable with pushing that boundary a bit, um, because why should I have to say why? It's a decision I made. I made it for myself. And so I must walk away, or I have to do this thing, or I have to stop talking to this person, or I have to stop going to these events, whatever it may be. Um,
Mm,
it's not good for you. It's your decision, and that's it. That's valid. But it's interesting because I do think I'm not going to get into this, but like I do think this has also a bit of connection with misogyny here, because it's
mm.
also like if it were a man, would they be asked why? Because I don't think so. It's just a decision that your bro had to make or this guy had to make. It's not like, well,
Yeah.
you should really learn how to forgive, and maybe you should work it out. And even within relationships, like romantic ones, it's like maybe you should work it out. It's like I can't tell you how many times I had to go through this discussion, and it's like, why do I have to work it out when I'm not feeling safe? I'm
They should
gonna
go
go
to
if
therapy.
right. It's not my responsibility to educate somebody else and how to treat me like a human being. If you don't know, then you're not in my life. End of story.
It, it's also a representation of why perpetrators get away with what they get away with in a society that sees the victims as the disruptor
Mm.
of people's comfort zones.
Mhm.
And I mean, when we had a childcare incident here this year of sort of a group. of 3 men, I think, so far, who have committed heinous acts against children in childcare centres, and they were childcare workers. I think one of them was, and maybe 2 of them were outside of it. Can't really remember. But anyway, and people in the comment sections were like, how do they get away with this? How do they get away with this? The stories that I've heard about childcare centres, they got away with it in one aspect because human beings find it difficult to validate something that is beyond their scope. 2, because a business has to run, and when a business is warped in survival, there's no time to deal with something that's going to need your full attention. Humanity's ways of dealing with violent acts, it's just easier to turn to the victim and say, why did you say something? Why did you speak up? Why did you bring this to our attention? I don't want to deal with what comes after this or what needs to happen with this. I'd rather just tell you to be silent so we don't have to deal with it and just let the perpetrator move on. Just let things go. How many times have we heard that in this society? That's why we turn to people that walk away from family or friendships and we look at them. And I'm not saying it's all within this one scope, mind you. There's many more experiences that come with this. We're just speaking from this element of it, right? But there are people that have had to do this also because if they stayed in these spaces, who's ever going to be able to hold them when the consequences of being in those spaces happen? If everyone is too busy looking at you as we'll call it a victim for now, as the victim and telling you to get over it. And then you go home and you're dealing with this erupting of your own nervous system and you're dealing with depression and anxiety and it's like your space is in chaos mode constantly, and yet you're being told, let it go, while the other person continues to project that behavior. We're always looking at the person being put through it and not the person putting them through it. And I really cannot stand it because who does that help? It just continues to bring people, you know what? It continues to invent people like Donald Trump. It continues to create people like the president of Israel. It continues to bring people like this into our reality because it's a human psychology first and foremost. You have to validate your point of action before you do it. You have to validate taking those steps and committing inhumanity. You have to validate that within yourself internally and in society. Before someone does something, they have to validate it, and that's what's happening. And instead, we ignore that their human psychology is flashing itself to the people around them. Hey, this is what I'm doing because this is who I'm choosing to be and this is what I'm choosing to do. And then they commit the action. And then people turn to the victim and say, it is what it is, let it go. And then it just keeps looping through. And we keep wondering why billionaires are greedy, why companies treat their employees like shit, why managers do. We ask ourselves these questions, but these are human beings with a human psychology. So what was validated within themselves? What was validated? What has been allowed to continue to happen? What have people never spoken up about? It all comes down to bringing these things to the surface and realizing that human behavior is the very thing that creates our society. And it's the very reason why so many people have chosen to start healing, because people are becoming more aware that they create. They're becoming more aware that they're not happy with where things are at. They're not happy in the spaces they're in. They're also not happy with themselves because it also is a self journey too. As we both have been saying this entire episode, and we've said on other podcast episodes before, and Nina said it before, we make our jokes, but perfection doesn't exist. We've had to take accountability and responsibility for our own behavior. For our own behaviors that has grown from survival mode. And there are so many other people out there that are responding solely through survival mode, patterns that represent survival, but are really just warped in harm, or thinking that that space, they need to protect themselves from it, when really it's an illusion. You don't. So you're causing something out of the fear of being hurt and causing the harm so you don't get hurt. So it's just doing it before it gets done to you. It's just the things that I know myself are difficult to see, but they're worthy to see, because if you don't get out of the loop, you just continue the rat race. You just continue the wheel. You're the hamster that keeps spinning on the wheel. It just doesn't end. So what choice do you have? It doesn't end, right? Even as Nina said, which is the last thing I want to say too, and acknowledge when she was saying, you know, it doesn't matter what people think. You don't owe them an explanation. And to add to that as well, with, you know, too, my friend, with people pleasing, as well as the fear of being perceived and wanting to belong, especially when it's family, especially when it's intermediate people that have been a part of our lives for so long. You know, there is that connection with nervous system from childhood. Like I said, with the relationship thing, we also grow that with our own family, the people around us, even whoever they are. That connection, those attachments form, right? So she's right completely in that it doesn't matter what they think, because it's your life and you're the one that's having to face the difficulties of these spaces, right? And also it's valid to care as well, because it really is difficult to not belong in the spaces where you have been taught you belong in the first place. When family is taught to you that that's the place that you belong more than anything else, and that doesn't work out. And I know the grief of that too, where you sit back and you go over it a million times in your head as to what you did wrong or what's wrong with you. And maybe that's just the human experience, and human beings have created the analogy that family equals belong, but maybe that's not the reality. And unfortunately, because the attachment was created, because that's what it is. It's an attachment that's created within all of us, because we're fed the perception that family equals to belonging and where you'll be safe. And that's not a reality for everyone. It's not a reality in this human experience. So maybe it's about relinquishing that attachment. Maybe it's about that. But it's also okay to feel the grief over not having that. It really is. Yeah.
Absolutely. I will say this. This is something I heard not too long ago, and maybe it may help some of you out there who understand this with familial patterns and having had to walk away, or not feeling like you belong anywhere in the world, and feel like family is supposed to have been that thing. Like you said, Ashley, it's an enforced attachment. But the thing is, and this is what I heard, the family that matters is not the one you were born into, it's the one you create, because that is the one you have more um, power over and influence in, because you will be the head of that or a head of that in some way, because you will be acting out of self. Whereas when you are born into a family, you're a child. You don't really have much choice. And so maybe that is something that can give a little bit of a differential, like separation there for the brain in terms of healing. But
Mm,
that family doesn't have to be like one you create with like a partner in terms of like children. It can also be friends. It can also be forming a community in other ways. There are many ways that we can have connection and relation and healing with one another. And at the end of the day, we're all just people, little tiny organisms, souls, trying to find our way in life and trying to figure ourselves out and trying to figure
mm,
out how the within world, the inner world, can become more external. right? But in the meantime, as we are progressing through life and trying to figure that out and trying to sort our way through existence itself, we must also hold space for the other. And it's not easy, but it can be done. And yeah, when it does happen, when we do find ourselves in connections where we feel we can be ourselves and heal and be who we are and grow into more, even when somebody enables us to believe that there is more to grow into, and believe in a future, it is a really beautiful, magical, and extremely valuable thing to have. And so, to those who are struggling, who don't have that right now, please continue to hold on. Try and find ways that make you feel like you belong here, and hold on to hope. And even if you don't have hope, hold on until the next moment, until tomorrow, until next week, and just take it as small baby steps as possible. And I promise eventually, hopefully, for every single one of us out there, there will be a person who will pour into us and make us believe in more, and that more is possible, not just for ourselves, but for humanity as a whole. And, if we can be that for you listening, watching, then that's a beautiful thing. I feel that way towards Ashley. She's that for me, and I hope to be that for her and anybody else in my life. And yeah, we just have to keep going, but know that it always starts from self. And it's hard to know where that is, what self is, but follow your intuition, follow what your heart is telling you. And if you can leave environments where you don't feel at ease, where that voice is speaking to you like these are not your people, do whatever is possible to leave those environments, because you deserve more and you can have more. Yeah.
And feel. That's my little my piece of guidance to you all is I mean, in my emotions of expression during this episode, I would have kept crying the whole episode in terms of like not being able to speak. So, but I will give it space to feel, because, essentially, why the hell not? You know, it's a reality that you and your body faced. So why deny something that made you feel a certain way about it? The grief that you feel, the whatever else is coming up with that, just feel it. Even if this helps as well, from what you've always seen happen throughout your life, and you've witnessed how people respond to things, and if you feel that sense of doing it differently, then this is that moment for it. If you've witnessed people around you not feel their feelings, well, why not do it differently? Why not? Why not just give yourself a little increment of that and see how you feel with it? Something I always said to myself, there's nothing to lose, really. You either keep suppressing it and looping yourself through that, or you try something different. Just do it differently.
Yeah.
You can literally switch hands when you're brushing your teeth. And sometimes that gives a sense of comfort to something that is so, sometimes we don't realize this, but is so sick of the same. Sometimes just switching the hand that you use when you brush your teeth, sometimes even making 2 eggs instead of one. If you love eggs, make 2 instead of 1, even though they're expensive. I understand that. Maybe having 3 pieces of toast instead of 2 with your favorite, spread on it. You'd be surprised how the small things feel a lot bigger, because you know yourself what something that may seem insignificant to others is actually a big thing for you. And you deserve to feel those joys, you know? So feel, while also asking yourself, even, how can I do maybe this one thing differently, even if it's something small? if you have that thought, just to say this quickly, if you have a thought of, let's say you experience a feeling come up towards a past memory, maybe you have that question in your head, what can I do with this that's different to what I've always done with it? And maybe that is just sitting in a quiet space or even outside and just allow it and saying to yourself, I'm just going to let myself feel this. And then just let it feel. Just let it come up in whatever way it needs to and just let it feel. Just let it be. Don't try to control it. Even if you have thoughts, let the thoughts just do its thing. You're not, completely going to change everything in that one go, you know? It's just relinquishing and surrendering to just being in that space and letting it flow. Even if that is difficult. We start small. If you've never done it before, give yourself the patience to start. That's my little piece of guidance for this
And it's
episode.
beautiful. It's beautiful. You're absolutely right. Break the pattern. Try and do something different than before. That's beautiful. And a wonderful way to leave it off. But yes, I don't know
Dramatic
who
shape.
won. I don't know who won today's award. But instead of,
Well, I do.
who?
No, the awards weren't the awards for
Victims?
yeah. We already spoke beforehand on who has some of the awards, and then Nina created the subcategories for it, which is really good. So we do have some winners.
Yes. They shall be emailed tonight. It's a secret.
Yep.
But
They're gonna
yeah.
love receiving that email. They're gonna send us something back like, I'm gonna sue you. How dare you? And then they'll tell everyone, I'm a victim. Look what they did to me. And the loop just continues.
It just continues.
Just continues. To be continued.
But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in today. We hope that, maybe this brought something for you. If you have anything you want to share, please, leave it down in the comments below. But yeah, shall we say goodbye, Ashley? Shall we walk off into the sky? My wife,
Let's
Mrs.
go,
God,
Ashley.
Mrs. and Mrs. God, and we shall walk up the stairway to heaven.
Goodbye, everyone. The gates are opening. We're starting to transcend up the stairs, through the gate, and now the episode is closing.